A professor sets a glass jar on the table. He silently places 2-inch rocks in the jar until no more can fit. He asks his audience if the jar is full, and they agree it is. He says, "Really?" and pulls out a pile of small pebbles, adding them to the jar, shaking it slightly until they fill the spaces between the rocks. He asks again, "Is the jar full?" They agree. He then adds some sand to the jar, filling the space between the pebbles, and asks the question again. This time, the class hesitates, some feeling that the jar is obviously full, but others are wary of another trick. The professor then grabs a pitcher of water and fills the jar to the brim, saying, "If this jar is your life, what does this experiment show you?" One of the audience answers, "No matter how busy you think you are, you can always take on more." "This is one view," replies the professor. Then says, "The rocks represent the big things in your life, what you will value at the end of your life: your family, your partner, your health, fulfilling your hopes and dreams. The pebbles are the other things in your life that give it meaning, like your job, your house, your hobbies, your friendships. The sand and water represent the small stuff that fills our time, like watching TV or running errands." Looking at the class again, he asks, "Can you see what would happen if I started with the sand or the pebbles?" Welcome back, English Seekers. This is Noruldin, and you're listening to English Seekers Podcast. You can listen to English Seekers Podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts absolutely for free. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. I want to really give a shout out to my lovely students, Laura, who got the full mark in the exam, Farida, and Ravan, who presented their presentations in a great manner. Thank you so much. Do your best to be the best. In today's episode, I just wanted to share with you this beautiful and amazing story about the priorities, or what people, as a matter of fact, prioritize in their lives, starting from the big things to small things. And I have two perspectives when it comes to this point. The first perspective is when it comes to practicing English. So, as an English teacher, of course, I want to implement this on utilizing the language in your life and trying to make it part of your life, or part of the jar at this point, or how to habitualize the language on a daily basis. The second perspective is that your life in general, all right? So when it comes to the first one, if you really want to improve your language, and I said this multiple times, it's not only about English, it can be about any other language you want to pick up. You have to live the language. You have to make it part of your life. So if we're talking here about the big rocks, and then you have the pebbles, and then you have the sand and the water, right? You look at the language as like it can be only improved by learning a lot of vocabulary, mastering the grammar rules, mastering the writing skills, and so on and so forth. But as a matter of fact, this is just the sand and the water. You completely ignore the big rocks in the language, which is what understanding, living the language like a native speaker. If you were to look at an iceberg in the water, you see on top of the surface, like this kind of a small mountain, let's say. But as a matter of fact, under the water, you see a huge and bigger part of this mountain, right? That what happens. Your focus is just only on a small part of the language. But understanding the language, the level that you can truly express your ideas, your feelings, your thoughts freely without being shackled by vocabulary, grammar rules, whatever it is, because you just want to deal with the language as something to study rather than something to live with. This is why I mentioned in the beginning, like when you try to make it a habit, that means you systemize or not systemize, you try, as a matter of fact, to program your body to accept and absorb the language as part of who you are. So you get the muscle memory, okay, when it comes to pronunciation. Even like when it comes to vocabulary, your brain starts to suggest things for you. So you can like deliver and convey your messages automatically, right? Without thinking about grammar or vocabulary. That's here the idea. And there's one of the things, one of the books that I read, it's called The Power of Habit, right? And in the book, it says there were a couple of scientists. They were trying to run an experiment on a man who had something in his brain, and then like they had to have a surgery, and then they removed this part, right? So the man completely had like a loss of memory. But after many years, they started to recognize that he started to do things, all right, and without even like remembering that this is how I know. For example, like when you wake up in the morning, you start like to go to the toilet, you brush your teeth and all of these stuff. But he would do these stuff, okay, automatically without depending solely on his memory. And one of the incidents in the book like reflect on that part by saying like when he gets out of the house, he just walks around and he can go back just by not by remembering, but just by like depending on the habit, what his body is used to doing back in the days. So for instance, like you have the footballers, you have basketballers, these like athletes, when they practice, for example, they do the same thing over and over and over again, right? And later on, their bodies know the job. The same way when you drive a car, right? So like later on, you don't have to remember like the steps. Just like because of the habit, your body actually and your muscles know the job. So that's here the idea. Instead of focusing on the sand and the water, try to prioritize or like try to approach the language from different perspective in a way that allows you to speak it naturally without any kind of limitations, right? Some of you guys are so scared to talk because they think that in order to speak, I have to master the vocabulary, I have to master the grammar rules. I'm afraid of people laughing at me while I'm talking. And this is completely wrong. The fact of the matter is that you can express your ideas regardless to your grammar mistakes, so long as people can understand you. Generally speaking, 90%, for example, and you can understand them, you're having a conversation. That what matters, right? Even native people or native speakers, they make mistakes. So if the natives are making mistakes, so what on earth are you afraid of? Just like feel free to speak, all right? And it's not gonna work out by any other means if you don't want to talk. If you keep just increasing your input but zero output, so it's useless. The only thing, and I mentioned that in other episodes before, that if you truly want to improve your English, you have to depend on two important things. Number one, speaking out, okay, your language, even if you have mistakes. Knowledge comes later, y'all. Number two, you can write, but not the studying writing, all right? Not the academic writing. No, write your thoughts out. Write your feelings out, your journals, right? Ignore the mistakes right now. Look, 90% live English, 10%, okay? Just study, to polish, to check, and so on. For example, like, what do you think Americans or native speakers do in their countries? They also need to go to school to learn English. What up? Yes, every native speaker, they also try to learn their language, their own language academically, right? They study also the same way you study. But outside of the school is not all their lives, right? Outside of the school, they speak the language every single day. So 90% live the language, 10% study the language. This is how you're going to improve your language. So think of the jar and have your own jar at home, for example, and start to see exactly what you should prioritize when it comes to learning a language and practicing a language, or generally speaking, building a habit and trying to let's say, for example, picking up a new skill, let's say. The other perspective that I wanted to share with yourselves is when it comes to life, generally speaking, right? There is a quote that I keep repeating over and over and over again because really this quote reflects a lot of things. And it says what? Never ever make someone a priority in your life while you're only an option for them. Sometimes we mistake people and we think that they are important in our lives, or we just replace jobs and other stuff, or as in the story, the sand, right? We prioritize these stuff, and if we were to fill our lives with the sand or the water first, or sand first in this case, because you can put things still in the water, but the idea is what here, you're not going to have space for other important things. When you prefer your friends, your job, your whatever you have, like nowadays, for example, social media, over your family, over your beloved ones, over what matters most, over what lasts longer, you end up losing the important things, and you end up having shallow things that are not that important. At the end of the day, it's over. You feel me? So, and of course, you have exceptions. I'm not saying that friends are not important. You have sincere friends, but to be honest with you, nowadays, they're just rare. And on a personal note, honesty started step by step to disappear, y'all. These people are going to be gems, right? And I think as a Muslim, for example, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, said that a time will come and sincere people or honest people will be so rare that you would have even to travel to find someone. It's gonna be oh, there's a truthful person, you can find him in that village or that place. So people nowadays, in order to survive, for example, in a workplace or in life, generally speaking, you have to be sneaky. You have to cover things around, you have to be discreet. But no, just try to stick to your principles. Just organize your life. Know exactly what are the priorities in your life. And again, as Muslim, the biggest big rock that you should have first of all before any other thing in this jar is your religion, Islam. You put this in the middle of the jar, and any other thing in your life revolves around it. That's the whole thing, because this one will help you, all right, improve in this life, in this dunya, all right, worldly life, and in the hereafter. That's the only thing, because this is the thing that you're going to meet Allah with. Other things will not matter on the day of judgment, because every single aspect of this life, every single thing in this life that you worked hard for will abandon you on that day. You're going to be on your own. So that's here the idea. So love your good deeds, all right? So your prayers, your zakat, all of the important things that you should commit and do. So your worship, these are the important things. These are the priorities, and then worldly things. All right. So that's here the idea. So let's say we have a big rock, the biggest rock in this jar, and then you have like smaller rocks now. Okay, which again, like your family and so on and so forth. So the biggest rock is your deen, your religion, Islam, and then the smaller rocks are going to be like your the other like important things in your life, and then you have the pebbles, and then you have the sand and the water. All right. So these are the two important things that I want to share with yourselves today, because this story really is awesome and you can learn a lot of things from this story. And again, try to learn. There's something I'd like to share with you here. Like, try to read more, try to learn about how the habit works. It's really important to understand this as well. On a personal note, add value to your life. So seriously, add value to your life. You're not just living your life just to eat, drink, and sleep, and that's it, right? You're so valuable. Your time is so precious to you. So please add value to your life. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. That was really appreciated. I hope that you liked this episode. Feel free to share this with your friends. See you next time.